about moving towards wellness. So some tips and tricks to live a happier and healthier life. A little bit about me. So I'm a chiropractor as well as Dr. Alex. I graduated in 2009 from Palmer College of Chiropractic in Davenport, Iowa. Since graduation, I have a sports diplomate in sports chiropractic, which is a 3-year postgraduate degree specializing in injury management and prevention. And then I'm also certified in kinesiotape, and something else that's unique that I do is what's called Graston technique. It's a form of instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization. So I use stainless steel instruments to break up muscle knots, adhesions. I've had some really good luck helping people with that. In my free time, I'm married. I have a wife and a son, and we have a new baby on the way here in April, and a miniature schnauzer named Yachty. So we stay pretty busy with that. Disclaimer. So I know Dr. Ali Grimes going to be happy. I have a disclaimer here, so you can't sue me for anything I say and you don't agree with. So again, these are my opinions, just things that I've learned over the years. I'm going to share them with you today. But if they don't mellow or they don't work for you, obviously don't do them. I know everybody's got kind of unique circumstances or some health conditions, and I'm not telling you not to do something or to go do something when it could be detrimental to your health. So I kind of use the word tips and tricks. First, a tip is advice on how to do something better. A trick is a method to do something better. So during this presentation, I hope you learn a couple of new things that you can apply to your everyday life. I once had a mentor say, if you spend an hour in a continuing education class and you walk away learning one new thing, it was worth your time. So my goal is for you to walk away with at least 2 new things. So I'm ambitious like that. So what is wellness? Wellness is a quality or state of being healthy in body and mind, especially as a result of deliberate effort. And I think that's really important. It just doesn't happen. There's effort that goes into it. And then also, to a second definition, it's approach to healthcare that emphasizes preventing illness and prolonging life as opposed to emphasizing or treating disease. One thing to kind of think about with this is wellness in the United States. Do we have a wellness care model, healthcare model, or do we see more of a sick care model? And kind of my thought is it's more of a sick care. In the US, we tend to treat problems once they become a problem. We don't try to think about them up front. I also had a mentor once say that a lot of times people spend the first half of their life accumulating their wealth, and then they spend the second half getting their health back, which they've neglected in the first half. So, again, kind of thinking about it from why not focus a little bit on health right now. So, again, what is wellness? There's 8 dimensions of wellness. When you go and you look into it, I could spend an entire weekend talking about this. Obviously, we have an hour, so we're not going to dig into each one of these little balls here. But we might brush on different parts of them just briefly. When I was at Palmer, we kind of had the 3 T's, 3 T's that cause problems or dysfunction within the human body. So they kind of were wrapped up under thoughts, traumas, and toxins. Do we have any golfers that are here today? If we have any golfers, the TITLEIST Performance Institute, which is a golf organization, actually took those 3 T's and they added a 4th one. They're the 4 T's that affect a golf game. They're thoughts, traumas, toxins, and technique. So again, if you do golf, that mytpi.com is a great resource for improving your golf game. So when, again, talking about thoughts, traumas, toxins, they kind of have a negative connotation. So what would the inverse of them be? So they would be stress reduction, meaningful movement, and clean eating. If you're a person that likes YouTube, there's a TEDx presentation about a Dr. John Principe. You can write that name down, or I put the link there. Anyways, he's a medical doctor who just got burned out being a medical doctor. He said people came in, they were always down and depressed. I would throw medications at them. I would, send them off to surgery. And I mean, he just hated it. He's like, they're coming in and they just suck the life out of me and I don't want to do it anymore. And he loved cooking. So he decided he wanted to go back to school for culinary arts. And so he started learning about diet, nutrition, and eating, and realized, if I took this, I could bring this message back to my patients and actually help them. So he started, he went to culinary school, and then he started looking into more functional medicine practice. And he actually practices in Illinois, and he created a kitchen within his office. And in the evenings, he brings patients in and he teaches them how to cook healthy meals, which is just kind of a neat, unique model. So again, just an interesting TEDx presentation. So again, kind of looking at each of those three T's. The first one we're going to talk about is thoughts, or stress reduction. And in the nervous system, we kind of have to understand that a little bit in order to really grasp what I'm saying here. And the nervous system, they tend to break it down into categories. So the first one is the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord. And then you have your peripheral nervous system, which are your cranial nerves and your spinal nerves, your 31 pair that go out to the body. And then you can further divide it into sensory, which is the brain to body, and motor, which is, or sorry, body to brain, and motor, which is brain to body. So you think of like sensory, a mosquito lands on my hand and I feel it there. And then that signal goes up to my brain, hey, a mosquito's there, I don't want it there. And then the motor is swatting it away. And then you further divide it into the somatic nervous system, which is your conscious voluntary control. So again, that mosquito's there and I consciously swat it away. The autonomic nervous system is the one we kind of want to talk about here. It's the unconscious, involuntary, or involuntary control. So if you just stop and think about all these things your body's doing right now without any thought, any effort, your heart's beating, you're taking in breaths with your lungs, you're creating enzymes, you're doing all these different things, and you're not sitting there saying, okay, okay, liver, we need to create this, or okay, pancreas, this needs to be done. It just happens. And that's that autonomic nervous system. And again, further divided into two components. You have your sympathetic, which is the fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, which is kind of that rest and digest. And these systems work in opposition of each other. So if my sympathetic, that fight or flight's really high, I'm dealing with a lot of stress. My sympathetic, that rest and digest, is really low, and vice versa. So again, with the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest, here's a list of all of the things that kind of happen. You're calm, you're relaxed, so you can decrease your heart rate. Your bronchi are constricted because you don't need to bring in deep breaths of air. Just all these things on the left are happening. And then on the right side is kind of the opposite of it, where your eyesight gets dilated, your heart rate increases. And we're going to stop right there. And I just want you to think about a stressor, something you're completely afraid of, whether it's a spider, a shark, taking a test, whatever it may be. So just kind of think about that stressor and that sense that you get, that feeling you get. So for me, I'm going to talk about like a bear in the woods a couple hundred years ago. If I lived in the woods and this bear was going to attack me, I instinctively know that I either have to start swinging at this thing or I got to run the hell away from it, because it's not going to be a good ending for me. And so that's what happens. You pump blood to your arms and your legs because you're going to run or you're going to swing. Your heart starts increasing. The rate increases. Your adrenal glands kick in to kind of help do this. One of the things that we also see too is sometimes people instinctively shrug their shoulders or engage those neck muscles. It's not uncommon for me to have people come in and say, oh, I carry my stress in my shoulders. Well, everybody does. And it kind of comes back to that. We instinctively know if this animal's going to come for us, it goes for our neck. So we guard it, we protect it, and we kind of live like a turtle. So again, that a lot of times when I find people are dealing with a lot of stress in their lives, they come in and I'm carrying it in my shoulders, and sometimes getting adjusted will help with that, or talking about different stress reduction techniques. So again, what are some ways we can reduce stress? And I kind of created just a big list here, and we'll kind of go through each of these bullet points briefly. For instance, exercise, that's one that everybody knows. So again, walk, run, bike, swim, different sports, or you go to the gym and lift. It's just a good way to reduce stress. If you're a person that doesn't do this and you'd like to do more, there's a Mayo Clinic actually has a Couch to 5K program. You can Google Couch to 5K Mayo and it pops right up, and it's an actual program. I think it's 5 to 10 weeks of getting you to where you need to be. Again, spending time in the sun. A lot of times in the winter months, people have what's called SAD, or seasonal affection disorder. And again, in the winter time, we're dealing with less sunlight. Being in the sun actually helps produce serotonin, and it kind of helps with our melatonin levels, which are feel-good chemicals, which help reduce stress. We're also producing vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually really not a vitamin. It's more of a hormone. But again, that vitamin D production helps increase our immune system. It helps us kind of stay calm and relax. Sleep. Sorry, Allie, we're going to talk about sleep, which you're not getting much of, you said. Sleep obviously is important for stress, but one thing I want to talk about too is we've kind of believed this model like that 6 to 8 hours straight through the night. If you're somebody that does kind of struggle with sleep, maybe look into what's called segmented sleep or polyphasic or biphasic sleep. Our ancestors don't sleep the way we do. And what they did is they actually did a study, and they read literature that was made prior to the Industrial Revolution. And in in all this literature, they talked about people would have first sleep and second sleep. So again, prior to the invention of light, natural or the light switch, people would go to bed when it was dark. They would wake up in the middle of the night. People would pray. They would go use the outhouse. They would actually go and visit neighbors. It's just kind of a weird thing. They had kind of this period for a couple of hours where they're up doing things, and then they'd go back to bed for what was called a second sleep. And so again, in today's world, we try to conform everybody like, oh, you need to sleep 8 hours a day. And if you're not that person, well, maybe it's because you're wired like our ancestors were. I also tell people during pregnancies, a lot of times to embrace it. Because I know I had a friend, and she was pregnant. She was like, I get home, I'm exhausted, I go to bed, and then I wake up in the middle of the night, and she'd clean her house and do all these things, and then she'd go back to bed and then wake up for the alarm, and she absolutely hated it. But in the end, it was a good thing for her because it was her body preparing for when baby was here. That was the schedule she was going to be on when the child was here. So she was better acclimated to it when the time came. Another one with stress reduction is caffeine and alcohol. So caffeine's a stimulant, alcohol's more of a depressant. They're both actually diuretics too. So you pee out more than you bring in as far as water content. And so again, if you're dealing with a lot of stress, throwing some caffeine into the mix or alcohol maybe isn't the best idea for you. Chewing gum, eating healthy snacks. So when I took exams, I would actually chew gum. And the reason why was to trick my brain into that sympathetic parasympathetic thing. So if I'm chewing gum, it's telling my body, hey, you're calm, you're relaxed. You don't need to be stressed out about this test. So it was just a little cheat to calm me down a little bit to help do it. I probably should have chewed gum while I'm talking here today to calm me down as well. So if you can't tell, I'm a little nervous. Laughing's a good one as well too. Whether you watch a good movie or go to a comedy club, laughing's just a good way to reduce stress. You release a lot of the feel-good chemicals. If you're a person that gets stressed out because your life's in chaos, then maybe spend some time to get organized or create checklists or avoid procrastination. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to talk about a book called The Checklist Manifesto, and I'll kind of briefly touch on why it's a good book and why we actually do checklists or why they're done in like the airlines, for instance. You get into an airplane and the pilot has a pre-check, post-check, and there's a reason for it. It takes that brain thought that would have to go into memorizing these things, and they just go down their step-by-step procedures and they don't make errors. And that's why checklists are such a good thing. Journaling. I actually read years ago that Abraham Lincoln was notorious for journaling. There was a general during the war that upset him, and so he actually wrote just this mean letter. And what he did is he wrote it and he put all of his emotions on it, and then he stuffed it in the back of his desk, and it was never found until years later. And journaling was just a way for him to write it on paper, get it out, and then kind of go back to being a little happy about life again. Yoga could kind of fit under that exercise category too. It's just a lot of good movement. Mindfulness meditation's another one. And then I always like this quote too, and it kind of falls under that mindfulness mentality. It's wherever you are, be there. And what I mean by that is when you're at work, you leave all of your home baggage at the door. And when you go home, you leave work at there. And if you're at your kid's sporting event, you leave that behind and you focus on your kid playing. Sometimes that's just a good way to stay in the moment and help reduce some stress. And I added cuddling intimacy, and cuddling can be with another person. It could be with a pet. It could be a pillow, a blanket. And they're just, again, ways to reduce stress, to feel safe, to feel comfortable. Gardening's a good one too. A lot of times gardening's actually we'll see that again later, that serves multiple purposes. But again, if you're gardening, it tricks your brain into thinking, well, I'm safe, I'm calm, I don't have this predator coming for me. So it just helps eliminate that sympathetic and ramp up that parasympathetic, that rest and digest. And then obviously cooking a nutritious meal, it takes your mind away from the stressors. You put your focus somewhere else. Positive affirmations or mantras are key. There's a book that I'm reading, and it's called The Daily Stoic. I'll kind of briefly touch on it on the end, but through this book, it's 366 meditations on wisdom, perseverance, and there's a few lines in that book that I tend to repeat to myself. One's amor fati, which is love fate. The obstacle is the way, realizing that some obstacles are in life, and that's what I just need to go through. They also talk about in the book, you have one job in this world, and that's to be a good person. So those are some simple mantras that I try to repeat to myself to make sure I'm being who I want to be. Saying no, that's a key as well too. I know sometimes people struggle with this one, but think of it like you're a juggler and you got 3 balls in the air. And, if you add a 4th ball, you're likely to drop all of them. And so that's what we have to do with our life too. We have to recognize what we're able to do within a 24-hour period and say no to those things that just complicate or create extra chaos. And that's a struggle for a lot of people. And I'm guilty of that as well. I put chiropractic, massage, and physical therapy on here too. Again, if you're somebody that deals with pain and that's part of your stress and anxiety, having a professional come and help you is important. Mental health therapists are key as well too. Sometimes you need to find out what the stressor is and remove it. If it's a person or if it's your job, you have a long life to live. Maybe getting rid of those things that are bringing you down can be important. I put music and movies here, and then read, learn, spend time with friends and family. And I put a question mark after them too. And the reason why is does this make you feel better or does it make you feel worse? I know if I listen to like Busta Rhymes or Ludacris, music wise, usually I get amped up, and that's probably not a good thing. And same thing with spending time with friends and family. Is this a friend or a family member that every time you walk away from, you're just bogged down with additional stress, where it just wears on you? Social media is also a big one as well too. If you go to social media and it makes you happy and, you like seeing pictures of friends and family, then absolutely do it. But if you're one where you get on there and you get off and you're just angry at the world because of what you see, then maybe backing away from it's for you. So again, kind of a big list here. Some of them are pretty common sense ones, or the ones you've heard before. Hopefully I gave you some advice to think about some of them maybe just a hair differently than you have before. Again, kind of going back to this circle earlier too, one thing that I've tried to do is read, learn, or talk to a professional. If there's one of these categories and you're struggling with, there's a lot of good books. For instance, me financially, I'm trying to figure some things out there. So I went to Barnes and Noble, or I went to the Ankeny Public Library and bought a book, and I'm trying to read through it to figure things out. And again, it helps eliminate a lot of that stress and anxiety that I have about that topic, and kind of give me a guidance or a path to take. Second one is trauma and meaningful movement. So trauma can be broken down into 2 things, either macro trauma or micro trauma. So macro trauma is I walk outside and I get hit by a car. Of course, I'm going to have problems. Micro trauma is all these little small, often minuscule things you do on a daily basis, these little repetitive movements. So there's that analogy, that's the straw that broke the camel's back. That's micro trauma. You load it, you stress it, you load it, you stress it. And ultimately there's this fail or fatigue point. And that's what micro trauma is. A book I read a few years ago is called Sitting Kills, Moving Heals. And in that book, it actually talks about we move less because of technology. Think about different daily tasks you do. For instance, laundry. In today's world, you throw it in one machine, you sit on the couch, watch TV, you throw it in the next machine, you sit on the couch, watch more TV, and then you take it out and fold it. But think about your grandparents or their parents and what they had to do. I mean, they took their laundry and they had to sit there and wash it and scratch it. And then they, on the, whatever the thing was called, and then they take it outside and hang it on the clothesline. And there was just a lot more movement involved. And this technology has kind of made us a little more sedentary. That movie WALL-E actually kind of made fun of it too, where everybody's floating around in their little floating chair and they got their soda drink and the straw right there. It's just created more sedentary lifestyles. In the book, it also talked about it's not how long you sit or how long you stand that's important, but the number of times you change positions, and try to be meaningful with your movement. And what I mean by that is for the people with desk jobs, you should actually be getting up and moving about every 20 minutes. And when you get up, try to treat it like a meaningful movement. Treat it like a squat where you come up out of your chair with good, clean form. And then when you sit down, try to sit as quietly as you possibly can. One of the tricks that I actually do too, if you drink pop, coffee, or water, put it out of arm's reach. It forces you to get up to go get a drink, and then you can sit back down. Again, it could take 10 seconds, drink, sit. The book, I can't remember if it talked about this or if I heard about it somewhere else, but there's actually what's called the sit rise longevity test. So you're standing and then you sit down. You basically go to the ground crisscross style, crisscross applesauce, I think what they call it now. And then you work on coming back up without using your hands. But people that can do that tend to live longer. So it's just a simple kind of test. Is that something I can do? If I can't, maybe that's a goal. I want to be able to do that in the next year. When I was in school, we actually talked about gravity loss on Earth versus gravity lost in space. So we were actually told that gravity has a harmful effect on the body. And that is true to an extent. If gravity is not used correctly, it can be detrimental. But if you use it correctly, it can be beneficial. In this book, it actually talked about gravity loss in space versus gravity loss on Earth and bone density. So in space, you lose approximately 1% bone density per month. On Earth, we lose approximately 1% bone density per year. So in space, our bone density loss is at a rate 12 times greater than it is on Earth. And that's why a lot of these astronauts, when they come back, they're stuck in bed for a while. And the lady that wrote this book is actually a PhD that worked at NASA in the life science division. So she was the one that basically told these astronauts, nope, you're going to be in bed for a while until we get your bone health back up, and then you can walk. And I actually listened to her speak in person once, and she said that was a big challenge because these are very alpha individuals. Like, they want to get to the gym, they want to be moving, they're competitive, and bed's not a good place to put them. So again, looking at this chart here, what I'm trying to illustrate is that picture in the middle, looking at the person from the side. What is good posture? Good posture is where that red line is. It's right through the center of the ear hole, through the center of the shoulder, through the center of the hip, an inch or two behind the kneecap, and through that knob on the side of the ankle called the lateral malleolus. That's a perfect plumb line as far as posture. Well, how many people do you look at that don't have that today? And why is it important? So how heavy is the head? The typical human head weighs about 12 pounds. And that's with the normal posture straightened down. If your head shifts 2 inches forward, you're now looking at 32 pounds of pressure. If you're 3 inches forward, you're looking at 42 pounds of pressure. One of the things I try to have people do is next time you're at the gym or you're at the bowling alley, grab a 12-pound weight and hold it above your elbows. You can hold it there for a while, but as soon as you start drawing that hand forward, you're going to notice more fatigue and tiredness in your triceps and biceps just because of that positioning. So again, if you're using a forward head posture, you're living like this, you're going to add a lot of additional pressure to those joints in the neck. You're going to add a lot of additional strain to those muscles, and people tend to get a lot of headaches as a result of that posture. There's actually a couple of laws too, that one's called Wolff's Law, one's Davis's Law. They basically say the same thing, but they just deal with different tissue. Wolff deals with bone, Davis's deals with soft tissue. And it says that tissue is going to remodel according to the forces it encounters. So if you're stuck forward like this day in and day out, those muscles are going to actually change in their length to accommodate that. They're going to change in their tone to accommodate that. You're actually going to start seeing some changes within the bone that's going to mold you to that position as well too. That's why I always think about that old lady or gentleman in the grocery store you see walking around hunched over. They didn't just get there overnight. That was a gradual progression, and a lot of it is slow and steady. And the more your head's forward, the more of a problem it's going to cause. One thing too, I don't really have a slide about it, is with that anterior head carriage, it actually starts to limit a lot of your range of motion within your neck. It limits range of motion within your shoulder. It limits your ability to breathe. And over time, it can actually lead to a lot of the tears. Like when people have a supraspinatus or rotator cuff tear, sometimes that anterior head carriage can be a part of fraying those muscle fibers that cause that injury. And just to go do a quick demonstration, and I might have some of you come along with me, is I'm going to have you jet your head forward, like that anterior head carriage. And I want you to turn left and then turn right. And I want you to notice how far you can turn, and then bring your head back to a nice neutral posture, and then go left and go right, and look at the difference that it makes. Again, jet that head forward, bring your arms up above your head, and see how far, if you can touch your hands together, bring that head back, and you can actually do it with a lot more ease. that forward head posture just starts to fix the scapula in a poor position, and it limits that glenohumeral, that ball and socket range of motion. Again, breathing, if I jet my head forward and I take a deep breath in versus I can get that little extra vital capacity just by improving my posture. So again, how many people do you look at, and how many of you look like this individual, or look around and see coworkers that look like this, just that poor posture? And a lot of us spend our day this way, whether it's working at the computer, whether it's driving a car, whether it's cooking a meal. We're kind of in this depressed forward posture. And again, over time, our bones, our muscles are going to change to adapt to that, and we're going to start having problems later in life. Here's kind of the new one too, where they've actually coined a term called texter's neck. And it's, again, a result of the posture positioning we are when we're using our cell phone, and they actually do the numbers here. So again, looking up, you're at 12 pounds. And then when you look down at 60 degrees, you're up to 60 pounds of additional pressure to that lower neck, upper back area. So again, learn to use gravity correctly. And how many of your kids, how many of you that have kids kind of see them on their devices kind of slump forward or balled up? Again, this is job security for me, because it's just creating a lot of issues or problems in people's necks and backs. So how do we fix this? Well, a simple stretch I like to do during the day, and I always show this to people in my office that have desk jobs. It's what's called a BRUEGGER'S stretch. So you basically sit out on the edge of the chair, you sit up tall, you start with your arms out at the side, you tip your head back, and you basically squeeze your shoulder blades together as tight as you can. You hold that for about 5 to 10 seconds and do 4 to 5 sets multiple times a day. It's just a simple stretch you can do to kind of counteract that. So again, if I'm slumped forward, my muscles in the front tend to get tight and engaged. By doing this, what we're doing is we're opening up the front and we're engaging the back. Okay. I've actually had people hurt their backs coughing and sneezing. And so just a couple of little pointers: don't try to hold it in, maintain an upright spinal posture. So try to stay upright. Don't twist and turn and bend like a lot of people do. And it sounds stupid, but if I'm standing up, I actually lift one foot up off the floor. My wife makes fun of me because I look like a flamingo when I do it. But again, it helps take pressure off your spine. And the reason why is when your feet are fixed to the floor, certain muscles fire, typically your hip flexors fire, and it adds an extra tug or pull on the spine. If I bring that foot up off the floor, that jolt is now free to happen within that leg versus that jolt being on the spine. And then by lifting that foot, it helps kind of engage your abdominal muscles and braces for that additional pressure. Sometimes when people come in with back pain, we actually do what's called the Ejerin's triad. We ask, do you have any pain with coughing, sneezing, or bearing down to go to the bathroom? If they do, usually it's indicative of a disc injury. Or we do what's called the Valsalva's move, where we basically take a deep breath in, bore down like you're going to the bathroom without doing so. And we ask, is there pain with that? If there is, a lot of times it's indicative of a disc injury. Not always the case, but it can be. Sorry, my fax is coming in. This is kind of for the guys in the room here. If you put your wallet in your back pocket, please stop. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about the disc. When you sit on a wallet, it kind of tilts your body to the spine, and you start putting uneven pressure on those discs in your back, and you're more likely to cause problems. So I actually have a little spine model here, and I'm going to hold it up. And this is a good, normal, healthy disc. So you have this like jelly filling. So I always think of a jelly filled donut. You have that jelly in the middle, and then there's that outside of the donut. And there's about 10 to 12 rings there. And what happens is when you lean to the side, or when you unload that disc, you actually start to drive that jelly filling out towards the side. And then you end up with like a bulge disc. And if that continues to progress, you actually progress towards a herniated disc, where it's completely herniated out. So I always joke, I think of a disc like a cat with 10 or 12 lives, where you gradually break through those rings over time, and it leads to problems. So. And then can't leave the women out. We're going to talk about purses here, my favorite topic, obviously. They actually have done looked at the numbers on purses, and the purses should weigh no more than 10% of your body weight. So if you weigh 150 pounds, your purse should be less than no more than 15 pounds. The less, the better. For the guys here, if you're dating your significant other or married, quit putting your crap in their purse. They don't need to drag it around for you. If you don't need it, if you have to have somebody else carry it. And then clean out your purse. I know I think my wife did like a bachelor party, and there was this checklist, like who has what in their pursing. And I mean, she came home and it's just unreal, like some of the things you girls carry around in there. I mean, has anyone else done that or know what I'm talking about, or am I just clueless? Okay. So, and then trauma and meaningful movement, kind of back to that second category. How many people have heard of that 10,000 steps a day? 10,000 steps a day is actually more of a marketing gimmick. The guy that invented the pedometer, the pedometer would go to 9,999 and then it would turn over to 10,000. And so there wasn't really any science that backed or supported it. I'm not telling you not to do it, but just recognize that other things might be better for health. For instance, brisk walking was found to be better, and brisk walking for 10 to 15 minutes. And they actually talk about walking to the point where you, with a little speed, you get a little arm movement with it. And what happens to those discs is you get a cyclical unloading and loading. So it actually helps rejuvenate discs and helps with their health. So other meaningful movement tricks, if you're a person doing sit-up, please stop. Sit-ups put that spine through repetitive motion, and it causes more wear and tear and burnout. They're actually talking about eliminating it from military fitness. Sit-ups are a big part of military training, and it creates a lot of injuries within our soldiers. Avoid lifting with the back. So you want to do what's called hip hinging. You want that back nice and straight. That rotation occurs at that ball and socket joint at the hip. Be mindful at all times. So for instance, I've gone to the gym and I've seen people do like curls, and man, their form's just so perfect. They're really watching their posture, and then they go put the weight away and it's just all sloppy, erratic movement. So kind of be mindful at all times. Balance the load when carrying. They actually did a study. You're better off carrying 2 30-pound weights in one hand than you are carrying 1 30-pound weight in the one hand. And so again, like with groceries, try to take it and split them up as evenly as you can on weight. Get assessed for proper movement. If you're somebody that has an issue with a joint, whether it's a chiropractor, physical therapist, massage therapist, get some of these issues worked on so you have a little more longevity. The last one's toxins and clean eating. This quote I've always liked: tell me what you eat and I will tell you who you are. It's really tough too, because there's a lot of different diet fads and things out there, which we'll talk about on the next slide. But one thing that was interesting is some old research thought there were about 10 trillion human cells, 100 trillion bacterial microbial cells. That came out, I think, in the 1970s. It's recently been disputed, but now we believe there's about 1.3 bacteria cells living in and on us for every one human cell. So kind of recognize, in a way, we're more bacteria than we are human. We have a symbiotic relationship with this bacteria, and taking care of them is going to ultimately be important for us. This another TEDx presentation here that kind of goes into it. And I think he used the incorrect stat on that, but I found an article where he's come out and he's recognized that it's incorrect and has gotten on board with that 1.3. But again, there's just a lot of different fads out there. And I'm not going to tell you what one to do, because every person is different. You got to kind of customize it to the individual. But I do want to talk about a couple that I did find really interesting. This Walls protocol. So Dr. Terry Walls is a medical doctor at the University of Iowa. She actually suffers from multiple sclerosis. She was in an anti-gravity chair, just debilitated. Like, her employer went up to her and some of her coworkers and said, if you can't do your job, we're going to have to let you go. And she was getting some of the best treatment for MS in the world because she was a medical doctor, had these connections, and it didn't help. It wasn't making a difference for her. And so she started looking at nutrition and started looking at animal studies and came up with a protocol. And it's basically 3 cups of leafy greens a day, 3 cups of sulfurous vegetables a day. Sulfurous vegetables are like broccoli, cauliflower, radishes, onion, garlic, and then 3 cups of colorful vegetables. And then she encourages healthy lean meats and organ meat. She actually was a vegetarian or a vegan prior to this and went back to eating it. And it was because of her health condition, and realized that she needed it. And I'm not saying if you're a vegetarian or vegan, you need to change your ways. No, what works for you works for you. But in her situation, she realized, I needed these things. There was a Dr. Furman. He actually had a mnemonics G-bombs. And I actually like this one. It's greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. were the ones that he encourages to eat. Dr. Perlmutter talks about grain brain, and it's basically trying to eliminate a lot of the grains and the carbohydrates. Whole30 is another one. Ketogenic's kind of a big buzzword right now too. And for those that don't know what ketogenic is it's trying to get your body to go into a state of what's called ketosis. Ketosis is it utilizes fats and burns those instead of sugars. So what you do is you eliminate sugars in your diet or carbohydrates, and you turn this energy burning system on. So kind of a takeaway: eat a variety of fruits, vegetables, lean meats, healthy fats, avoid a lot of the sugars, grains, pastas, avoid dyes, preservatives, and chemicals. For me, when I go shopping, I try to stay out of the middle of the store as much as I can. I go and I hit the fruits and vegetables. I do the meat market, and then I go to the back corner where the frozen fruits and vegetables are. And, obviously it doesn't happen every time. Clearly you can maybe see, maybe not. But I think trying to stay away from the middle is key. Avoid drugs and tobacco. I'm sure all of you have seen the before and after pictures of somebody on meth and how horrible it is. And limit exposure to just certain household cleaners and chemicals. So I got a slide here going back to tobacco. I'm going to show you a healthy lung versus a smoker's lung. If you don't want to see this, just look away for a minute. So here's a non-smoker lung. You can kind of see that nice color, and there's elasticity to that. That lung can expand and contract easily. You get this other lung of the smokers, and you can actually see a large cyst in it. It's just tarry and it's hardened. When I was in undergrad, I actually went to Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids, and we had a smoker's lung, like cadaver, and then we had the healthy lung, and the teacher showed it to us. And I mean, you can actually feel the difference. It's amazing. But it was funny because there were a couple of girls in the class who were smokers, and I mean, they saw this, and it actually set their stress levels off so high they had to go outside and have a cigarette to calm down, which kind of defeated the point of what the teacher was trying to do there that day. So kind of back to this chart I showed earlier. Now, what I did is I went back and I looked at, okay, thoughts, traumas, toxins, and I highlighted some of them here, like 2 birds, 1 stone, or in some cases, 3 birds, 1 stone. And like gardening and cooking a nutritious meal, you're actually doing all 3 of those kind of techniques, which I think is key. So again, I just underlined the 2, like for instance, reduced caffeine, alcohol. That's going to help with your stress reduction. That's also going to help with your clean eating. Eating a healthy snack, again, clean eating and stress reduction. Yoga, it's going to be meaningful movement and stress reduction. So in my mind, if I'm like, okay, I want to do one of these things to help me with my stress levels, which one do I pick? Well, I might go for the one with the stars or the asterisks by it, or I might look at one that's underlined, because I'm going to get more bang for my buck. That's all I wanted to do with this slide, was just kind of highlight them. And I'm trying to push along here, just kind of barrel through this. So there's what's called the extracellular matrix. It's a space outside of the cell, outside of the cellular area or cells. And there's 2 things that control nutrient flow through that. One's the density of the tissue, and the other one's the viscosity. The viscosity is like how hydrated you are, how much water you get. Or the density is think of like a jungle. If I have a packed, dense jungle and I got to march all the way into the middle of it, it's going to take me longer because there's just more stuff in my way. And that's what happens in the body too, sometimes with nutrient flow. So with the density, a lot of times one of the things we can do to help free it up is get a massage, cupping, that Graston technique I was talking about. Foam rolling can be beneficial for that. The viscosity of the fluid, again, water intake. There's a lot of conflicting viewpoints on water. There's people that say, well, drink when you're thirsty, or 8 cups of water a day, which actually has no scientific merit. They talk about 3.7 liters for adult men and 2.7 liters for adult women. One that I kind of like and that I try to use is half your body weight in ounces, and then incorporate more with exercise. But again, drinking water doesn't just happen. You have to make a conscious effort to drink more water. And again, like me, I try to keep my water bottle out of arm's reach, but I put it here today just because I'd get a little chapped as I talked. I wanted to talk about a book called Blue Zones. Blue Zones was written a few years ago, and the author teamed up with National Geographic, and they went and identified populations where people tended to live longer. And they went to these 5 places. Sardinia, which is an island south, it's part of Italy. It's an island. Icaria, Greece, the Nicoya Peninsula, Costa Rica, Loma Linda, California, and Okinawa, Japan. And they found what made these people live longer. And they came up with 9 common denominators, and they call it the Power 9. And the first one is move naturally, which is kind of what we've talked about a little bit today. You know, grow a garden, don't have mechanical conveniences for your house or yard work. Try to do more, just be more physically active. Purpose, you know, if you don't have a purpose, I highly recommend finding one. Why do you get up in the morning? What's your purpose in life? Who do you want to be? Downshift, find ways to reduce that stress. So whether it's reflect, pray, nap, you go to happy hour. There's what's called the 80% rule. And 80% rule is if I eat a meal and I'm satisfied at 100%, I stop at 80%. That's the 80% rule. Try to limit how much you consume. Plants slant, they talk about beans being the cornerstone of a lot of these centenarian diets. And then meat is eaten on an average of only 5 times per month, which I found was kind of interesting. So in the United States, we may eat too much meat if we're having it every meal. Wine at 5. A lot of these people in blue zones drank. The only exception were the Adventists, which lived in Loma Linda, California. So again, alcohol can be drank just moderately and regularly. And then if you're a person that has issues or problems with control, then maybe don't. And then belong, like all but 5 interviewed belong to some faith-based community. And loved ones first. They found a life partner, they invested in their children, or they invested in their family. And some of them lucked out. They were just born into the right group, you know, or they found the right people to be around that encouraged them to live this life. And so again, kind of going back to earlier, that stress reduction, if there's somebody in your life that holds you back or pulls you down, you know, maybe having a deep look at eliminating them or limiting the time you spend with them. Like I have a good friend. I love the guy, but he's a small dose individual. You know, if I get around him too much, I'm pulling what hair I have left out type of thing. And then I saw this quote here recently: if you change nothing, nothing will change. Again, when we talked about wellness earlier, there has to be a conscious effort. It just doesn't happen. And then in a perfect world, we would do everything perfect. We don't live in that world. The goal is for you to be better today than you were yesterday. That's actually something I say to my patients all the time. You don't be in competition with anybody else but yourself. You know, a lot of times people look at, oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime, this is what he was doing, and then I'm going to come off my couch and be there today. It doesn't happen that way. You just got to do that gradual, slow progression towards that. Again, some additional books. I talked about the Checklist Manifesto. This was actually written by a medical doctor, and the purpose of the book is there was a lot of surgeries that were having just complications from it. And so he identified, I think it was 7 or 9 different things. They created a pre-surgery checklist, a during surgery checklist, and a post-surgery checklist, and actually increase the success rate of surgeries and decrease the number of injuries that occurred or actually deaths. But he talked about in this book, like, again, pilots, they have their pre and post flight checklist, or if there's a complication on the plane, they grab out the checklist, the steps that walks them right through so they don't miss anything vital or important. Again, when you build a building, you don't just slap it all together. They have blueprints, they have a roadmap on ways to do it. And that's what it is, you know, in your life, or whether it's in your occupation, creating some checklists just to take your brain thought out of it. You have a flow sheet that you go down. This Daily Stoics, a book I've probably been reading for the last 4 or 5 years. Every morning I get up and before I leave my house, I read one page. Every page is dedicated to a quote, typically from a Stoic philosopher. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, there's Epictetus, Cato, there's just other philosophers, and they give a little blurb and then they give a little summary of what it means. And I like to do that one. That one's been good for me. And then The Power of Habit, why we do what we do. Starting to recognize our key habits within our lifestyle. And if we can shift one of these key habits, we can actually change everything else. And you know, a lot of our lives is on autopilot. You just get ingrained in habits. You don't even realize it. And I had somebody once tell me, if you don't think habits are important, take your garbage can, and if it's on the right side of your desk, move it to the left side and see how long it takes before you figure out where it is. You know, you just ingrain these habits. And so I think I'm going to end with that. Pretty much perfect for time here. If anybody has any questions or anything they wanted to know more about them, I'm definitely happy to answer them.
Hey, Brett, Cole here.
Yeah.
I actually just picked up that book, excuse me, The Power of Habits.
Yep, it's a good book.
Is it? Okay.
You just got it. You haven't dug into it yet?
I haven't read it yet.
No, it's amazing because it talks about like personal life, and then it also goes into business. They talk about Target in that book, and it's amazing what Target's doing with the data they're gathering. It's interesting too, because like you read the book and it opens your mind to all these things. Like one of the things they talk about in the book is when people walk into a grocery store, 78% of people turn right. And when you turn right, they always put the groceries and those items there. The reason why is you're going to go get your healthy, nutritious foods. Sorry, they put the produce and like fruits and vegetables to the right. So people grab that. And then when they get to the back of the store, it allows them to barter and say, hey, I got a cart full of healthy things. I can get this ice cream. And so it actually increases spending. They also talked about data with like people change habits when new changes in life occur. And a big one as Allie just happened is having a baby. I mean, that just completely throws your habits and routines out the window, and you got to come up with new ones. And so companies try to utilize that. And so what Target's done is they've taken all the data they've had from their birth registry. So people register, they say, this is the due date. They have their Target card. Target knows everything they purchase and buy. And then they were able to calculate like the likelihood of a woman being pregnant based off of all the data they have. And it's a pretty high success rate. I mean, this Target knew about a kid being pregnant before the family did because of the data they had. And they even talk about it in the book. It's neat. And they talk about Alcoa, the aluminum company, and how they completely changed that industry just by changing one keystone habit. They hired a new CEO and he said, I'm going to focus on safety. And by focusing on safety, it actually increased productivity. It increased the productivity and happiness of their employees. And it just made it a big, powerful company. So.
Wow. So
hey, Brett.
Think I should...
Go ahead, Cole. I was going to switch subjects, so you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was like, so do you think I should get one of those front wallets then instead of the ones for my back pocket, or?
Yeah, usually the front wallets, you know what, if you're a person that puts the wallet in the back pocket and you know you're going to be doing a long car ride or it's going to be a while, move it to the front pocket or move it to the center console. It's just, you're trying to eliminate that wedge underneath that hip that throws you off kilter. Again, if you're off kilter, you're loading one side of that disc and you're driving that nuclear material, that jelly filling, which is called the nucleus pulposus, out towards the side. And over time, that can cause additional wear and tear on the spine. So you're just trying to balance it. I always tell people, like, walk around your house with one shoe on, one shoe off. That's what you're doing to your hips and your butt when you're sitting on a wallet day in and day out. So
don't worry about doing the front wallet. Just get a fanny pack.
There you go. Fanny pack it is.
What about a baby Bjorn? Like, how is that there you go, Allie, right? I think somebody else had a question.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. This is Ruth Holstrom. I'm out on a run right now. I'm listening to you. Thanks, Brett. I really enjoyed your talk. I was just curious, in terms of sleep, I know you talked a bit about that.
Yeah.
Do you have any, I guess, further knowledge just in terms of, I listened to a TED Talk, called Why We Sleep by Matt Walker, and he's also got a really interesting book. And he talked a lot about sleep and inflammation, and how obviously, like, sleep or lack of sleep can increase inflammation and how that impacts just our overall well-being.
It does. I mean, you think about sleep, that's when your body regenerates. That's when it heals. If you're not getting adequate sleep, you're not really allowing your body to fully heal. So this inflammation never goes away. So like one of the things that I didn't mention that I wanted to was if you're a person that uses technology at night, maybe get like the blue lens glasses where you can actually eliminate some of that. So you can get into that circadian rhythm a little easier. But yeah, I'm a big believer, like lack of sleep is just detrimental to people's body and their health. And, you know, a lot of times if you're not getting sleep, you start seeing the physical changes, whether it be the bags under the eyes, or even the mood. You know, a lot of times people, if they're not getting sleep, they're just off. And it's tough. I know Allie, like with a new baby, and I'm going to be there too. I know one of the things that my wife and I did to kind of help us through when our son was born is we actually took turns. And what I mean by that is tonight was my night, tomorrow's her night. And there was this little carrot mentally dangling in front of me. It's like, I got to go home tonight. I'm taking care of baby all night, but tomorrow night I can sleep. And that little motivation was huge for us. I actually had a patient in my office here last week, and there's a program that actually, I think she said it was like a couple $100, but it's a program that you do and it actually works. It's training the parents how to get the baby to sleep through the night. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but if that's something you did want, let me know and I'll contact the patient and get it for you. But I mean, that's the thing too. Like one of the reasons I love AYP is there's a lot of great minds here and there's a lot of great information that everybody has. And I enjoy going to the events because I can pick people's brains. If there's something I don't know, I can ask somebody and they have great advice for me. So.
I would
All
definitely take the name of that, Brett, if you want to email it to me.
Yep. I'll look it up. I'll make a note of it and see what I can find.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, guys, it is 1 o'clock. So if anybody else has any questions, please let us know. You can hop on here, send us a message in the chat. Otherwise, if you want to reach out to anybody on the AYP board or even Brett, we will be sending out this. We recorded this presentation today and we will be sending it out in our newsletter. So if you guys want to watch it again, you can get all of this information again. Thank you so much, Brett. I learned a ton. I took a million notes.
I was going to say, quick show of hands. Did everybody learn at least one new thing? One new thing. Okay. Nobody. No. Yeah. Now I got to go back and listen to how many ums and uhs and likes and mess ups I made because you recorded it. Great.
Oh, don't even worry about it. You did fantastic. Like I said, I took a million notes. Obviously I've been working from home forever. So anything to de-stress my life is great. So
hey, and you know what? I never once mentioned the pandemic here and it was intentional. I didn't even want to bring it up.
Great
But again,
job.
this is a good time too to, if you're, dealing with it, this is a good time to change habits. And that's hopefully you recognize it as an opportunity. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Brett. Just a quick reminder, next Thursday.